Hi, I am Amanda and I come on every Tuesday on my Facebook page to give inspiration to upper grade teachers. So 5th grade, 6th grade, middle school. I teach middle school, I teach 8th grade. Even high school teachers, inspiration for implementing reading and writing workshop in their classroom because I believe that teaching using workshop methods is the best way to engage students in becoming real readers and writers, not just in school, but like in their lives. And I also believe that workshop really simplifies things for teachers. So yeah, that's me. I'm Amanda. I live in the Bay Area. And today, so I actually just recently finished grading 133 essays, 133 essays. And tell me if this sounds familiar, if you're, an English teacher. And I did teach elementary. So I taught elementary. So it's not, it's different. It's different. It's just as hard. Both are hard, but different. And if you're here live, I would love to learn about you and for you to ask questions during the Facebook Live and just introduce yourself. What's your name? Where do you teach? What grades do you teach? I am on my phone right now. And I can see your comments if you want to go ahead and start throwing those comments up there about where you're from and what you teach. So the simple tool. So first of all, I had to grade 133 papers recently. And so when you have that many papers to grade, when you have that many essays to grade, it feels awful. Like when you haven't started yet, it feels like this huge mountain, like you're looking at this huge mountain and you're just like, but I have so many other things to do. I don't have time to climb that mountain. Do you know what I mean? Like, when am I ever going to get this done? Because yes, we have prep periods, but like prep period, like honestly, so I have prep second period and sometimes I'm so drained already from like getting my daughter ready in the morning and getting everything ready for my students that day and then teaching first period. And I'm super high energy and just like, all over the place in my classroom, conferencing. And so I'm so drained by my prep period that I just want to like clean and do something mindless. And so it's so overwhelming. Like when am I ever going to get this done? And we make all these excuses like, oh, I need to do this. This is more important. And then we just keep like putting it off and putting it off. And so one thing that I have learned is to use, let me explain this, to use a timer. That's the tool, to use a timer. And here's why. Because there's this mental block of like, there's this huge mountain and I don't know how to climb that mountain. It's too big. I don't want to do it. And we avoid it and we do everything we can to like not have to grade, but we know we still have to. We have to climb that mountain. We have to get the grades done because we're required to get these grades done. And so a timer can be so powerful because, so what I did, and what I do, and I've only recently started doing this and discovering how it can just like remove these blocks in my mind about grading. So what I do is I grade a paper and I time myself. I figure out, okay, how long did that just take me to grade that paper? And I'll like write down the time, like, oh, it took me 5 minutes. Okay, I grade the next paper. I write down how much time that took me. Oh, it took me 4 minutes. And then I grade another one and I'll write down like, okay, how much time is it taking me to grade each of these papers? Like really. And the reason that that's really powerful is because you can do some simple math to figure out if you're grading, if it's taking you, 3 to 4 minutes, 5 minutes, if it's taking you longer than 5 minutes, you can start to do some math to figure out, okay, I have 133 students and it's taking me 5 minutes to grade each of these essays. Okay, how much time of my life, like it gives you an idea of how big that mountain is so that you can break it down and figure out, okay, it's going to take me about 8 hours. If I'm planning on spending 5 minutes per paper, then it's going to take me about 8 hours. How am I going to spread that 8 hours over the next couple of weeks? And so it's like you sit down and you figure out, okay, I can do half an hour here, I can do half an hour here, I can do half an hour here, half an hour, I can do an hour here, and you can kind of spread it out, and like it makes it more bite size and doable. It's not so heavy and not so never ending, because if you don't know how long it's going to take you, it's overwhelming. It's like, this is never going to end. I'm never going to get out of this. But if you have like an end in sight, there's something that it does to your brain that makes you feel better. And so I actually got, I like, honestly, I don't have any notes for this this episode, because I'm just like, I have a bunch of math here. And so what I would do is I would set a timer and I would just like start grading, and I would grade, and I figured out that I could grade about 18 papers an hour, and you get faster as you go. And so it ended up taking me a total of 7 hours and 40 minutes. And I averaged about 3 minutes and 45 seconds per paper to grade 133 papers. And so I don't know. I just feel like doing the math in advance can help you feel better and kind of break the time up into your life. Not so much like, okay, I got to sit down and grade these papers. I don't know when I'm ever going to be done. Like that kind of attitude, like, oh, this is so overwhelming. But more like, okay, I figured out how many hours this is going to take me. I'm going to make sure to like make a promise. I'm going to spend 20 minutes every day during my prep grading, and I'll set my timer and do 20 minutes, done. And then, I'll spend an hour here and an hour there, and just figuring out, your plan, like making a plan in advance. Teachers are planners. And I think this is one way that grading cannot feel so overwhelming, by just figuring out like what's the end game here. So that's all I have for you today. I hope that it was helpful. Thank you for joining live. If you feel like this could help someone else in your life, another teacher, share it. Feel free to click the share button. I'm not seeing any comments or questions. I wonder if anyone has a question. Let me just check real quick before I get off here. If you have any questions, throw them in and if you're watching the replay, feel free to ask questions later. Where is this video? So yeah, I don't know. I'm really glad that I'm over that mountain. But the thing is I have another mountain coming soon. So it's kind of like one mountain after another, right? Until summer. Okay, let's see here. Oh, grading essays. Mary Alice, hi. I know. I think someday someone is going to discover that grading essays is not really that helpful to our students. And I'm actually doing this new thing for this unit, which is pretty cool. So I had students they read a short story, and then they wrote a theme essay. And it was pretty quick. It wasn't a really long unit. And I just graded all of them. And I graded it with a really simple rubric. The rubric was this small. And it was like I graded their claim, their subclaim, their reasoning, and mechanics. Like just 4 things. And so I graded all of it. And it took me, like I said, 3 minutes and 45 seconds per student, about average. And I did a lot of comments. I had students highlight their claim, their subclaim, and their reasoning. And so it made it like in different colors. So it made it very visual for me so I could find it really quickly. I didn't even read their summary. Like I told them in their introduction, they needed to kind of summarize the story a little bit. But they're about to write another one for a book. So then we're doing our book club unit. And so they're reading their book clubs and they're going to write another one. And so the first one was practice. So I graded it as classwork, not as an assessment. And so I keep referring back to those theme essays and all the things I noticed that the kids were doing during the theme essays. For example, one of the things that a lot of 8th graders do is they don't explain their evidence. They don't really annotate their evidence. They just throw in a piece of evidence and they say, this shows my claim, or they just repeat what the evidence says and they don't say anything new. Do you know what I mean? Like, kids don't annotate their evidence in their essay. They don't kind of flesh it out. And so I taught a mini lesson today about that. And I have the kids going back into their book club books and looking for really good quotes and breaking the quote down and thinking about okay, what does this word mean? And what does this word mean? And what do we think about this part of the quote? So that they're and I told them, one of the things I noticed in a lot of your theme essays was you're not really breaking the evidence down. And I showed them an example of a kid's paper. I didn't tell them whose it was. And I was like, look how they wrote the quote and then they just repeated what was in the quote. And so it's really powerful when you can use an assessment and circle back to it and refer back to it in your next unit. Because I feel like a lot of times when we grade essays and we give them back and it's we've already moved on to this next unit. And that doesn't make sense to me. I feel like assessments, we need to constantly be circling back to them. And I'm still talking about the memoir that they wrote back in August. They're noticing a lot of inner thinking in their book club books. And I'm remember during the memoir unit, how much I talked about inner thinking and how inner thinking is a really important author's craft tool to use in your memoirs. And so just constantly circling back to these ideas and not just moving from one thing to the other and just forgetting about everything that you taught at the beginning of the year. I think is really powerful. Okay, let's see. Oh, Mary Alice, thank you so much. You inspire me too. I mean, teachers that they're done teaching and yet they're back on the computer looking for more inspiration. Okay, another thing that has helped me a bit is thin slicing papers. What is that? Looking at the similar pieces, similar skill level students and chunking them to grade one after the other. That usually have commonality that will ease the feedback. Oh my gosh, that is brilliant. Yeah, so putting them into different piles. So, and your kids, at this point in the year, if you've already read a lot of their work, you can kind of even just look at their name and kind of know possibly where they would go in the piles. And even just the amount that they wrote. I had 8th graders that wrote half a page for their theme essay. And I'm that's going to go in the pile that needs a lot of support. And then the pile that, the kids are probably at grade level. And then the pile that the kids, they're really doing some deep thinking, and put that in a pile. Yeah. And so it's similar. And I think it's helpful too, to read the really high achieving ones to kind of know what exceeding is, because that's one of the columns on the rubric is exceeding. And I tell my students, and this is our whole school's policy, is that exceeding means you're above grade level. You're writing like a 9th or a 10th grader. You're not writing like an 8th grader. You're writing like a high schooler. And I mean, that's the goal. And I tell my students, when I was your age, I wasn't right. When I was in 8th grade, I was probably writing like a 7th grader. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being at grade level. It's totally fine. And so just kind of reading those more advanced ones and then reading the more at grade level ones and getting a sense of what advanced looks like, so that you can know when to give exceeding and when to give the meeting expectations. So thanks, Marissa, for bringing that up too. Okay, thank you for coming. You made this episode way better and more substantial by being here, Mary Alice and Marissa. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I didn't really inform anyone about this Facebook Live. I've been super busy with my daughter and with grading. But I'm done for now, and yeah, it feels good to be done. Okay, I helped someone in the world today, and I'll see you again next Tuesday, everyone. Bye.